Welcome to So Much and More to Say. My name is Nafemi, and I'm happy you guys are here to listen. On this episode of So Much and More to Say, I am going to be talking about The Truman Show. And The Truman Show is an American film released in 1998. It was written by Andrew Niccol. It was directed by Peter Weir, and it stars Jim Carrey as the lead character, Truman Burbank. The Truman Show follows Truman Burbank, a regular guy who, unbeknownst to him, is the star of a reality TV show, hence The Truman Show. This movie was interesting, is all I can say. I did enjoy it. I really, really enjoyed it. And let's just get into what it's about. So Truman lives in the fake city of Sea Haven, I believe it's called, which is not a real city, but essentially what it is, it's like this is, what's the correct word for what it's shaped like? It's basically just a film set, but it's like this big circular dome, I think it's what it's called, in the middle of like a real location where everything is just fake. The sky, fake. The water, not really the ocean. The moon is actually where So Truman doesn't know what's going on, but at some point, as the movie progresses, he starts to realize, something's not quite right in this place. And the very first thing that gives Truman a signal that everything's kind of not right is pretty early on in the movie, a light falls out of the sky. And then one thing I really liked that the movie did was that after that happened, it had this fake radio station give this fake news report of like, oh, blah, 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 was like falling out of the sky. I think it was a plane or something. I don't remember. But very early on, we see how, Christoph is really controlling everything, and whatever goes wrong, they just use the radio station or like the news reports to make Truman think like it was this thing instead. But yes, as the movie progresses, Truman starts to realize things are really wrong after he sees his dad, who is supposed to be dead. So the dad poses as like a homeless person, and then Truman sees it and he's like, oh my gosh, dad? And then these two random characters immediately grab the guy that's the dad and take him out of the set. And Truman's like, wait, dad, stop. Like Truman fully saw everything going on. So he's like, what's going on? And then the producers try to cover it up with this news report of the city cracking down on homeless people to try and make Truman think, don't think too much about it, just move forward. But after that really happens, Truman's like, something is not right. And he starts seeing weird things like unfinished sets being built. So there's one part where I can't remember where he went. He went to a building. I think he was looking for his dad when he did that. I don't remember. But he went into this building and you see the wall is unfinished. And behind it, you see like an extra or something eating like snacks. And then all of a sudden they start to like move something across to like hide what Truman was trying to see. And then obviously the next day they make this news report about how an elevator, I think, broke or something. And then it was this whole thing. But he becomes more and more aware of what is going on. And when he does, he tries to leave Sea Haven, but Christoph, the producer, will not allow him to. And yes, this was honestly a really, really, really great film. And I thought it was actually supposed to be a commentary of something, which I'll get into later. I don't think it's supposed to be, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. Overall, like I said, the concept of this show is really, really cool. And the guy, Christoph, who made everything in the show, he was sick. It's not like a good, like, oh yeah, that's sick. No, he was not okay, because when you actually look at everything for what it is, I'm like, oh my gosh, you mean to tell me this man took this kid, adopted him, built a whole fake life for him, for people to watch and enjoy, and that's like supposed to be, it's just supposed to be, you know, I don't even know what to say, because when you actually think about it, so early on in Truman's life, they had to do something to ensure that Truman wouldn't want to leave Sea Haven. So they had his dad killed off in this boating or sailing accident to basically traumatize Truman so that he didn't want to leave and he would hate going near water. And it actually worked, because for a while, Truman, even though he wanted to leave, he couldn't actually leave because he was always scared to get on like boats and stuff. It was sick. Like, they literally fake traumatized him. Well, actually, they really traumatized him with a fake situation, with a fake dad. Everything about Truman's life was so fake. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. It was a really good movie, though. But like I said, I like the overall concept of this show. I thought the plot was super, super, super interesting. I think Jim Carrey did an amazing job as an actor in it. And I think I don't remember her name, but she played his wife. His wife's name was Meryl. And Meryl's character was funny because she was always doing the kind of ads, you know, how like TV shows will have product placement to promote a certain thing that's like maybe sponsoring the show. She was always the one that was doing that, and it was so funny because there were some scenes where she would like all of a sudden look at the camera, say something, and then, you know, to try and market it, and Truman would be like, what are you doing? It was really funny. But yeah, Meryl was an interesting character. The whole time I was watching the movie, I just kept thinking, are they actually legally married? Because Truman's life is fake, right? Fake mom, fake dad, fake friends, fake school, fake city, fake everything. So is he actually legally married to Meryl? Because whether he was or whether he wasn't, I was just like, that was just crazy to me. Like, they really went so far. And Christoph even said that he was pushing for Meryl and Truman to have a kid together. He was like, we can watch the first live on-air conception. What? That was ew. Sorry. Christoph was not okay. He was really scary. But yeah, Truman's character was really, really fun. I loved the beginning where he says, you know, to his neighbors, in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. I love that saying. And I also liked that the people who actually watched the Truman Show were characters in the show as well. So, not in the show, in the movie. So we didn't get to just watch Truman's life in, you know, the fake city of Sea Haven. We actually got to see other people watching the Truman Show and see their reactions to things too. And I thought that was really cool to, you know, have the audience be taken out of Sea Haven and then see what Sea Haven looks like from the perspective of other people just watching it. Kind of like, you know, we were characters ourselves in the movie. And yes, there's also one scene where Truman always says hi to these two guys in the morning, and they always like push him up against like this poster place. And it was another one of the kind of product placement parts of the movie. And I just thought that was really funny. It was really cool to also see Truman's like slow descent into self-awareness. Maybe not self-awareness, but just realization that this is not what it seems. I think what really sparked it was when Meryl is a nurse. And so Meryl went to go to a surgery, and Truman decided to follow her to make sure that she's actually going to surgery. And so he followed her all the way to the hospital, all the way to the operating room where he stood in the gallery, I think. Maybe it wasn't exactly the gallery, but he was still like looking inside. And there was one part where, you know, okay, it seemed like she was actually going to do a surgery, only for a loud sound to happen. And the patient actually woke up suddenly, and then kind of looked and was like, and then, they kind of like shoved the patient down. Truman was like, what? Truman was like, I saw that. Well, he didn't say that, but he was like, reaction was like, what? And then he tries to confide in his friend, whose name I do not remember. But he tries to confide in him, basically thinking that people were watching him. And there's one part where he tries to escape the city of Sea Haven with Meryl, but as soon as he pulls out into the car, all the other cars come in front, causing traffic. And he's like, wow, how convenient that it happens when I'm leaving my house. And then he tries to bypass everything, goes down this empty street, and he makes it pretty far until he gets to this kind of, what area was it? It was not like a foresty area, but basically, they're basically saying that there was something wrong with the area where Truman had driven to. Something about, was it nuclear? Was it a nuclear plant? I don't remember, but it was a forest fire, wasn't it? I don't remember. But they at least tried to paint it that, oh, there's something wrong in this location. You can't drive past it. And then Truman tried to escape, but he was brought back home, I think. And there was one scene where he doesn't really take Meryl hostage, but he kind of does, like, did he hold a knife to her or something like that? There's one part where he kind of like, is holding on to her, and then they send Truman's friend to the house to, kind of calm things down. And then Meryl kind of breaks character, and she's like, I don't know how you guys expect me to go on in these conditions, when she's crying. And I think that was really like the big turning point. After that, they had Truman's dad come back into the show. As in, he was never really dead. He was just missing. It's like one of those parts of like soap operas where the character you think is supposed to be dead actually isn't dead and comes back. I was like, this is really giving like soap opera right now. It's very mellow. It was so funny though. So then I think they tried to appease Truman with that, thinking that, oh, if his dad is there, then everything's just going to be fine. And I think Truman's dad comes back after Meryl leaves, because the actress who plays Meryl in the Truman Show, she was like, I can't do this anymore. And then she just like, up and leaves. So her character gets written off basically. And early on in the film, Truman has this obsession with going to Fiji, and he keeps buying these magazines to actually put together somebody's face, the face of this woman. And it's like, who is this woman? And then we see a flashback of when Truman was younger. I think he was in university, and there was another woman who used to be part of the Truman Show, but she was merely kind of just a background character, an extra. But her and Truman just seem to have this, pull to each other. And Truman, he's interested in her, she's interested in him, but the producers don't want the two of them together. So they keep pushing for him to, be with Meryl and not the other girl, whose name I believe her name is Sylvia. Well, her real name is Sylvia in the show, but in the movie, but like in the show, like the Truman Show, I don't remember what her name was, but I know that her fake last name, I believe, was Garland, but her real first name was Sylvia. So essentially in university, Sylvia and Truman, they kind of like each other, but the people don't want Truman and Sylvia together. So whenever Sylvia and Truman kind of get close to each other, they kind of take Sylvia away. And then there's one part where they're in the library and Truman wants to hang out, but Sylvia's like, no, we can't. They won't let us. And then, but they end up going to hang out, and they run really quickly because Sylvia's like, okay, if we don't go now, we're never going to be able to go. So they run off and, they're just chilling. They're at the beach. It's night, only for Sylvia's dad, who she's never met before. I remember the woman in the movie, she was saying, I don't even know who this man is, when her dad was saying, Sylvia, it's time to go home. We have to go. And so the producers get there really quick, take Sylvia out of there and drive off. And her dad says that they're moving to Fiji, basically, to try and tell Truman they're moving very, very far away. Forget about even trying to find her. And then after that happens, Truman, I suppose, we don't really see it happen, but after that, it's pretty much presumed that Truman and Meryl get together and get married. I need to know if they were actually legally married. I actually need to know that. But, before we see the flashback, we see, Truman's kind of thinking about this other woman. And I'm like, Truman, you're a married man. Be faithful to your wife. Why are you thinking about another woman when you're married? And then they show us that flashback. And also we get to see Sylvia as an audience member as well. Like the real Sylvia in real life. There's one part of the film where they have the audience members call in, and Sylvia's one of them. And Christoph is like, I remember you. I know that voice. And it's like, Christoph is sick. I honestly just cannot believe Truman's whole life was fake. It was all fake. That must have been so traumatizing for him at the end when he leaves. Because at the end of the film, Truman does end up leaving Sea Haven, thankfully, but not without a fight. He has to deceive the cameras and the producers and like escape. And he's on a boat. And Christoph, it seems like he's almost about to kill Truman. He's causing the waves and everything to go crazy. And it seems like Truman might, be really hurt, but then he's not. And he makes it to the end of the dome where, the sky is like painted. And he finds these steps that lead up to this door. And then Christoph's trying to convince him not to go. But then Truman's like, in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, to say goodbye. And he leaves. And then we see Sylvia like running down her steps as if he's going to make his way to her in like 2 seconds or something. But we see her running down the steps, and it's pretty much presumed Truman leaves Sea Haven and he goes off into the real world. Also, when that happened, the audience members were actually happy that Truman left. I was very happy that Truman left. That was a very not good situation for him. I wonder what his life is going to be like, or what his life was like now that he left Sea Haven. Because that man doesn't know anybody in real life. He knows no one, and everybody knows him. We really have to think about this. Well, I have to. Honestly, Christoph was just a really, really crazy guy. He was really unsettling to me because everything is fake. Like, he literally tried to fashion and build this whole man's life because he wanted to, for what? His own pleasure, his own, I don't know, to make money, whatever it was, I don't know. And his name, I looked it up. His name means, because I love when names have significant meanings. I think names are very, very, very significant. And I like seeing the significance of a character's name with their character. I looked up, and I remember I also put together, I was like, oh my gosh, his name is Truman. True man in a fake show, in a fake world, but he's a true man. I was just like, is there a connection there? Maybe we'll see. So Christoph's name means to bear Christ. And I was like, that meme or those jokes where people are like, stop giving people biblical names without teaching them biblical stories. It's like, how am I going to get robbed by like Elijah or Moses or something? And so it's like, Christoph basically means to bear Christ. And I was like, are you? And I was like, okay. And honestly, when I watched the movie, back to what I was saying about it being a commentary, I remember I was thinking, is this supposed to be a commentary on the exploitation of like children's stars or even just celebrities in general? Because when you actually think about it, at least how I saw it initially when I watched it the first time, it was like, okay, you take this guy, Truman, aka a representation of like, celebrities or child stars, and you thrust them into the public eye for whatever reason, and now they're basically just the property of organizations, TV shows, record companies, or whatever. And their whole lives are in front of everybody else's face. So everybody has to watch them grow up. They don't really have a private life. And they're basically just exploited for the profit and the benefit of the people who make money off of them. So how Truman's life was basically exploited and just shaped to be this thing that Christoph wanted. It's kind of like how in real life where you have maybe, I want to specifically talk about child stars because, Truman started off on the Truman Show when he was a kid. But like, in real life, you got like these, child stars who are just exploited like right from the jump, whether they, came into the limelight voluntarily or at least like maybe through their parents, or they were born into the limelight because their parents are, celebrities themselves. And I was just thinking, wow, if this was supposed to be a commentary on the exploitation of child stars / celebrities, then I don't think it's supposed to be, but if it was, I think the movie would have done an amazing job. I think the movie would have done a really, really, really amazing job. And it kind of got me thinking about how I love showing versus telling. In creative writing, you're taught to show versus tell. You don't just say the character was sad. You say the character's shoulders sagged and their chin quivered or something. You're supposed to show the emotion. You're supposed to show the message, not just tell the message. And I love when it comes to artistic things, especially in TV and film and also books. I love being shown things as, the work is supposed to do. It's supposed to, that's the whole purpose of it. I love a creative / artistic twist. And with showing and telling, I always love a good artistic / creative twist on something, whether you take a societal issue, a mental issue, something emotional, a concept, and then you do something artistic with that to kind of show that. I always love that. I think that's always a beautiful thing. And I think it's always fun and creative to do stuff like that. I believe one of the reasons why I really, really, really love being shown things is because it helps my brain to draw the connections on its own. And I think it's kind of like being given a bunch of numbers and then you realizing, oh, this is the equation that these numbers work for, something like that. I like when, I draw the connections, I come to the conclusions, and I can pick up on what the writer or the director or so-and-so is doing with a film myself. Being told things is great sometimes, being told straight up oh, this is a movie about blah, blah, blah. You need to know that. Let's get into it. But then being shown it, it's oh my gosh, wow, the sky represented this. Oh my gosh, the color yellow represented that. The reason why the house was this big was because of blah, 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 blah. I love that. I'm always a fan of showing versus telling. And I love. My favorite example of this comes from the parables told by Jesus in the Bible. And for example, I'll use the 3 parables in Luke 15, for example. So Luke 15 starts off with the Pharisees being upset with Jesus, as they typically were. It starts off with the Pharisees being upset because Jesus is, they say oh, wow, Jesus sits and welcomes sinners, and they're upset about that. And then to basically explain, himself or the situation, Jesus tells 3 different parables. And the first one is about a shepherd looking for his lost sheep. The second one is about a woman looking for a coin. And the last one is, I think, a pretty famous parable, the prodigal son. And the first parable that Jesus tells is about a shepherd who has 100 sheep. He loses one and he leaves the 99 to find the one sheep. And then he rejoices because he found his sheep. And Jesus says that, the angels rejoice over, even just one sinner who repents. And then the second parable is about a woman who has 10 coins. She loses one coin. She searches everywhere to find that one coin. And then the third one is about the prodigal son who, he's the son of this man, and he basically takes his inheritance. He absolutely wastes it when he leaves the home with inheritance. He wastes it and he just doesn't, live his life right. He realizes, what I'm doing isn't right. I have to go home. So he goes home and he kind of just expects to just make it into the house, not even as a son anymore, but as a servant. But when the father sees the son coming, he welcomes him back lovingly, graciously, compassionately, and even throws a celebration to celebrate the fact that his son has returned. And the oldest son, because, the father had 2 sons, and so it's the younger one that wasted the inheritance. The older son is a little bit upset. Well, not a little bit, but, he's upset because he's I, have basically stood by you and I didn't get, a celebration, but, he does. And then the father essentially just tells him, don't be sad. You're always with me and everything I have is yours. But, your brother was lost and now he's found. And what Jesus shows through these 3 parables in response to the Pharisees being upset that he's sitting and, eating with sinners is, I think, number one, Jesus doesn't pursue sinners to sin with them, but to restore them onto him. And so you see how much Jesus cares about reconciling people back to him, that he will, pursue the people that society may be like, oh, or they're too far gone, or they're, don't hang out with them. We don't want people thinking that, this thing about us. But you see how Jesus pursues these people. He pursues sinners because he wants them to come to the saving knowledge of himself. He wants them to repent, to turn away from sin and to follow after him. And then you also see in the second parable, with one with the coin, I really love this parable. You see how this woman had 9 other coins. She could have easily just been like, oh, it's just one coin. I have 9 others, whatever. But no, she's like, every single coin is extremely important to me. Every single one. So I have to find this one because I need all 10. I don't need just 9. I need all 10 of my coins. And it puts into perspective just how much God loves every single individual. There's a verse in 2 Peter 3 verse 9. I believe it says that, God is not slow as some would count slowness, but instead he's patient. And this talks about his return, Jesus' return. And it talks about how, he's not tarrying because, he just wants to tarry. He's waiting for everyone to come to repentance because he doesn't desire for just even one person to perish, but also come to the saving knowledge of Christ. And I think the parable of the woman with the coins really puts into perspective. It's not like Jesus just sees a whole crowd of people and he's like, oh yes, there's about roughly 900. Yeah, that's good. The rest of the 100 or whatever. No, he pursues and he loves every single person individually, and he seeks to save and redeem and restore every single person. And I'm just like, wow. And then the third parable with the prodigal son really just shows, honestly, just the abundant grace, love, and joy that God has. And I think for one, the son that left, it wasn't like he was just a bystander to something that was bad or anything like that. He actively chose to do, wrong. And, he did wrong. And he knew he did wrong. He realized, okay, I have to go back home. And he kind of just expected to not even make it into the house as a son, but as a servant, so he wouldn't even be treated as he was before. But the father graciously welcomed him back. And it just goes to show how no matter how far a person has strayed, no matter how far or no matter how heavy the weight of the person or a person's sin is, once you turn away from that and you come to Jesus, he will receive you. And I don't remember exactly who. I think I've heard it more than once, I believe, but people talked about how, it says that when the father saw the son, so it wasn't like the father was just lounging around the house. He was actually actively waiting and seeking for the son to return. And it shows, it's like Jesus could have just told these just told straight up what he was saying in these parables. But in these parables, in saying, telling this story, he really shows just how much of what he was trying to say. And I love that. And, the father's waiting for the son shows that God is actively waiting for people, to see him, to come to know him. And it makes me think about Genesis where, after Adam and Eve had sinned, God still, because God is all knowing. So he knew they had sinned, but he still asked, he said, Adam, where are you? God fully knowing that Adam had done this thing still called Adam. And it's these parables just really show a lot of how much God loves his people. And then also with the celebration part in the prodigal son, it shows how, it shows how somebody coming to Christ, no matter what they've done in the past, is always a beautiful thing. It's always something to be celebrated. And it's never something that you should be jealous of or think, like, is it really deserving? We're all saved by grace through faith, not of works. And I just love how Jesus used these parables, and showing versus telling. I will always love being shown things, because it just helps you to understand the message even more. Now, this isn't to say that just to be straight up told something is bad. No, sometimes it's necessary, but being shown things, it adds more to it. And I think when your brain draws a connection on its own, it's a different thing, because I think even sometimes with like personal realizations, like when you like watching a TV show or movie and you see that maybe it's supposed to be an allegorical tale or a metaphorical representation of something, when you're able to put two and two together yourself, I feel like it's kind of like, oh my gosh, it feels like I'm a detective and I just like found an amazing clue. I'm like, wow, I this production. I think the writer did such an amazing job, and he really wrote and created a cool movie. I especially really liked the little things here and there that kind of took Truman out of the bubble of, what he thought was his life, and made him have to face the reality of this is not his actual life and this is fake. Also, shout out to the person that did the soundtrack, because there's this one song, I know it's called Underground. And let me look up what the name of the artist who made the song is. It's Burkhard Dalwitz. But the song Underground, that song, I really like that song in the movie. It was so cool. Every time it came on, I was always like, oh yeah, it's banging. Sorry. Yeah, honestly, the story was great. The characters were great. The concept was great. And once again, I don't think it was supposed to be a commentary on the exploitation of, child stars. But if that's what it was going for, it would have done an amazing job. But yeah, honestly, The Truman Show, great show. I recommend watching it. It was amazing. Do I have anything else to say? I don't know. I believe that is all. Thank you for tuning into this episode of So Much More to Say. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time with the next episode. Goodbye.